Okay, so I still have another minute before I officially start, which is why I'm not really sure when to begin. I'm a stickler for timekeeping, I must say. I don't like to be late for anything, so I've been sitting here for about an hour waiting for everybody. But I will start. First off, I just want to say a huge thank you to Rachel for organising all of this and allowing me to have a slot on here to talk about my work, and to all the other authors that she's got involved as well, because all of them are amazing and it's just so exciting to be a part of this. And a big thank you to At Home Milk as well. It's a shame, of course, that the actual event had to be cancelled due to all the madness in the world at the moment, but it's great that we can get online and still do it. So big thank you. And to anybody watching, hello, my name is Abigail Tyrrell and I got published this year. Don't know why I had to think about that, it's not that hard. But my novel that I'm going to be talking to you about today is my debut novel called Roots Before Branches, and it is an LGBTQ romance. So actually, I would say to start off with, when I was writing this, I never intended it to be directed towards the young adult market at all. And it wasn't until after it came out and people started giving me feedback saying, this is a young adult book. It's about coming of age, it's about growing up. And I reread it and I was like, do you know what? It actually is. So that's why I'm here today, because I didn't realise I wrote a young adult book. It's not usually the genre I write in. But yeah, Roots definitely falls into that category. So today I'm going to be reading to you from the novel, and then I'm going to be taking some questions if any of you have any. I did post the other day on Twitter, asking if anybody had any questions beforehand that they wanted to ask. So I have a few of those as well, but I'll try and answer the questions here first, and then I can go onto Instagram at another time to answer them if I run out of time. So I'll talk to you about Roots. It is a story about a boy called Charlie, who is from England, and he moves to France with his auntie to study at an art school there. And while he's there, he meets another man called Ezra, who is working for his aunt, and they slowly fall in love. As much as I wanted it to be a love story, I think it delves more into kind of mental health issues, and it doesn't focus too much on kind of the sexuality aspect of it, although of course it is a big part, and it's a big part of growing up, especially when you're Charlie's age, like 17 years old. It can be a very daunting thing to kind of come into in your life. So I did want to make sure that those aspects were important, especially for anybody who's reading it, to be able to hopefully relate to Charlie and maybe get something from it as well. So hello, I see there are a few people there now, and I'm not just talking into the abyss that is Twitter, so hi. I'm going to start the reading now, and then if you're listening and you get any questions, please feel free to ask me afterwards. This is the book. It's just been redesigned as well, so it has different artwork. I know a lot of people bought the previous copy, which I did have somewhere, but it was more of a green artwork, but this is the new one, which also has some updated edits in it as well, and that is available now. You can get that on Amazon. It's also on Kindle Unlimited, so if you do have a subscription to that, you can read it for free, which is always good. Anyway, I actually struggled to pick what bit to read to you, simply because I didn't want to read the first chapter because it's very much scene setting, and I didn't want to go too far into it as well, because if you do want to read it, I don't want to spoil anything either. So this, I don't have chapter numbers, so this is the chapter called Home, so I'll be reading from there, so I hope you enjoy it. Being back in England felt like stepping out of one world into another. The sleepy town that my aunt lived in was very much in its own bubble, stuck in time in an enchanting way. My dad was meeting me in London before we could go back to Suffolk, and being in the capital was like being smacked in the face of technology that I had not missed or acquired for months. Liverpool Street Station was bright and busy. Large screens advertising various products or films were in constant motion, a bustling backdrop for the noise and constant train announcements over speakers. I felt like a tourist, looking around as if I had never seen the setting before, even though I had been there many times in the past. I spotted my father sitting outside a coffee shop and made my way over to him as quickly as possible, weaving between the crowds of people who all seemed to be in a hurry and going in the opposite direction to me. He greeted me with a broad smile, and I noticed he had new wrinkles around his eyes, which were definitely not there the last time I had seen him. My dad was a tall, broad man, and until recent years he had a head of dark hair, but it was now peppered with grey hairs at the sides. He had grown a beard since I had last seen him, but it was well kept and actually suited his ageing face rather nicely. Sitting at the table with him was a woman who must have been in her mid-20s, with long brown hair curled and styled to one side so it fell over her shoulder. She wore a tight black dress, and her lips were painted bright red with lipstick. She smiled at me, and I noticed just how white her teeth were. "Charlie!" My dad stood up to embrace me, and it always felt nice to be hugged by him, to inhale that familiar scent of cologne and the washing powder he had used for years. When he let go, he held me back at arm's length and looked at me. "You've grown," he said, just like he always did. "I don't think I have," I laughed, just as the woman stood from her seat and went beside my father. "You certainly have, kid," he said affectionately. "I want you to meet someone," he continued, taking his cue to introduce her by the way she nudged him gently. "This is Jo." "Hi," I smiled at her, and we shook hands, all rather formally. "Nice to meet you, Charlie." "I've heard so much about you," she gushed, and I looked at my dad with a quizzical expression. "We have been together a while now," he said, and I couldn't believe what he was saying to me. He had never mentioned her before. "I know it is a surprise, but I didn't want to introduce her until I knew what she really was the one." "The one? Wow," I said, and looked between them. The age gap was beyond obvious, but the way she looked at my dad seemed like she genuinely did like him. "Well, it's really nice to meet you then, Jo." "Thank you," she said, and I leaned over to kiss her cheek. "Don't worry, I won't be asking you to call me Mum or anything," she laughed, and I laughed back as a polite response. "No, well, that would be weird," I said, and Dad sat back down again, so me and Jo did the same. "Daniel will be meeting us in Suffolk," Dad said, and the mention of my brother made me smile. "He's never liked London, has he?" I said fondly, and Dad shook his head. "No, he seems quite settled down in Suffolk now too. Seemed a bit silly for him to come up here just to meet you off of the train." "Have you met Daniel yet, Jo?" I asked her, and she nodded. "Yes, only once, a few weeks ago." I felt a bit annoyed that Daniel hadn't thought to warn me that Dad was going to be bringing a woman into our lives who was more than half his age. "We asked him not to say anything to you," Dad said, as if he was reading my mind. "Jo thought it best to just meet you herself rather than hear about her over the phone or email. Not that you ever answer my emails anyway," he said, and gave me a mock stern look. "I rather like the fact that you think that Aunt Hildy has internet in her house," I grinned at him. "It's why I don't have a phone. There is no signal out there. That's why I always tell you to call the house phone, but you don't listen." "I only remember when my messages go unread for a few days," he laughed, then looked at Jo. "You'll have to come and meet my sister soon. She lives in the most beautiful town." "He's right," I agreed, and Jo smiled warmly at me. "She has a lovely house too. Really amazing gardens. She has a new gardener, actually." "Don't tell me she's let Andre retire," Dad asked, looking shocked. "No," I laughed. "I don't think he actually wants to retire, if I'm honest. But she'd let him get an assistant, The gardener's looking better than ever. Good. Poor guy needs a hand, Dad said, then looked down at his watch. Right, you better move or we'll miss the train. Let me take your bag, Charlie. Dad, it's fine, I've got it. Let me. I don't get to do hardly anything for you these days. I sighed and handed him my bag, which I think was heavier than he anticipated, but he hauled it over his shoulder, and the three of us went to our platform. It took just over an hour to get where we lived from London, and it gave me a good chance to talk to Joe, as, like usual, my dad fell asleep during the journey. He always said it was because the train would rock him to sleep with its movements. I don't think he wanted to admit that as he got older, he would take a nap whenever he could get it. Jo seemed nice. She had met my dad at the Tate Modern, where she worked as a receptionist. I didn't ask why on earth my dad was at the Tate, as he had always expressed how much he hated art galleries when I pestered him to take me to one. Maybe he was secretly an art fan. He had asked her on a date after going round the whole place. Apparently, he had told her that's how long it had taken him to work up the courage to ask her. It's kind of sweet to picture my dad walking around the many rooms, thinking about this stunning woman he had seen the whole time, just willing himself to ask her out. I asked her why she had said yes, and she said that she thought he was handsome. Then I asked a question you should never ask a woman, according to Aunt Tildy, and asked her just how old she was. 24. The number shocked me, as I thought she might have been a bit older than she looked, but that was how old Daniel was, so he was literally dating her, and he was old enough to be her father. I know what you're thinking, she said, with a knowing smile. He is a lot older than me. Well, he is, I stated, and she gave a small nod. I do really love him. I have never been treated so well by a man. He came into my life at just the right time and made me feel like I actually deserved to be loved. I'm glad he makes you happy, and if you make him happy, then I'm pleased you found each other. Do you mean that? She asked, and I nodded. I do. My dad works hard. He raised both me and my brother on my own after my mother left. He's always done everything he can for us and always puts us first. He deserves to have his own happiness too, I explained. Just, please don't hurt him. I have no plans to, she said seriously. I want to be part of your family. I really am in this for the long haul. You hoping for wedding bells? I asked with a laugh, and she nodded eagerly at me. I would love that, she said, and she wasn't joking. I know, you might think it sounds soon, but we have been together over a year now. Over a year, I repeated. So you're about at Christmas? Yes, but I spent it with my family. We didn't want to rush into things. I see, I said, and rested my head against the window and closed my eyes, signifying to her that I didn't want to talk to her any more about it. I eventually drifted to sleep and only woke when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I opened my eyes to see my dad had moved to sit next to me, and Jo was the one who was asleep now. So, do you like her? He asked, and I groaned and rubbed at the back of my neck. Yes, Dad, she's nice, I murmured, and stifled a yawn. She said you'd been together over a year, though. We have, he confirmed. After your mother walked out on us, I vowed that I'd never let anyone into our lives who had hurt us again. I needed to make sure that this was really something before I moved forward. Hearing Dad explain it made it seem a lot deceptive, and my body language softened. It's okay, Dad. I just want you to be happy. Thank you, Charlie. I don't think Daniel is quite as understanding. Maybe you could talk to him? Sure, but you know Daniel. He takes a while to adjust to things. I know, Dad sighed, and clapped his hand onto my thigh. But what about you, kiddo? Any French beauty caught your eye back at your aunt's? Maybe, I smiled and thought of Ezra. I imagined bringing him back to England with me one day and introducing him to my family. I knew that they would get along. Am I just going to get a maybe? He asked. Not comfortable talking to your old dad about it, huh? I will, just not yet. Luckily, he didn't have time to dig any further, as the conductor announced that we would shortly be arriving at the station. Dad gently woke Jo up, and we gathered our things just in time for when the train pulled in to stop. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'm going to say I'm open for questions if you have any. I think I had a couple as I was reading. So just give me a second and I'll have a look. Will you keep writing young adult? Yes, I actually have a novel that I've just finished, which is another young adult story, based kind of on a cooking show, a bit like the Great British Bake Off, which was actually really fun to write. I wrote that with a young adult audience in mind rather than like with Roots Before Branches, just that happened to become young adult. But my second novel that should be released later this year is not young adult. So I think I'm kind of teetering about between young adult and adult books at the moment. What inspired you to write Roots Before Branches? I've been asked this question a lot and I find it really hard to answer. What inspired me? I think having it set in France was a big thing for me. When I finished university, I was meant to go to Paris to study for a master's degree. One thing or another stopped me from going. So I feel like my heart has always kind of been there, but I never got to go. So writing a book that had a character who was studying in France was always on my mind. And the rest just kind of came naturally as I wrote it. I don't plot, which I think sometimes shows. I had a very, very, very rough idea of where Roots Before Branches was going to go. And I'm going to say, luckily, it didn't go that way because I'm so happy with how it actually turned out. And as Rachel was actually saying on her broadcast, your characters have a mind of their own. And I love that. You know, I'm glad that my original plans for my characters didn't actually happen because they wouldn't have been happy characters in the end. Look. Where is my favourite place to write? I have, this is going to sound really unglamorous, I have a shed in my garden. I call it my she shed. I've painted it, I've got a desk out there, pictures up on the walls in there, books, everything I need. That's where I like to write. It's really nice, just kind of having a little space in the garden, especially when it kind of just starts to rain. But it's warm. My partner has their office in the house, which is what I'm in at the moment, and is currently working from home. So having my own shed in the garden has been really handy for writing. So there you go, you can all picture me in like a shed writing away now. But it is great, it's my little space. I'm going to go to one of the questions on Instagram. So let me just grab my tablet, which is, do you think mental health is important in young adult novels? I think it definitely has a place. Roots Before Branches focuses heavily on mental health. I remember when I was, Charlie's age in the book, so 17, 18 years old, and I had horrendous anxiety and panic attacks. And at the time, because this was, gosh, as much as I hate to say it, over 10 years ago now, I didn't have many people to talk to about it. It wasn't something that was really in books I was reading, was on television, anything like that. And I felt really, really alone. And I think with the way things are today, more and more people are talking about mental health, which I think is incredibly important, especially for younger people, because you aren't alone. So many people have so many things going on in their heads, and you really are not alone. And I wanted to write about it because although Charlie is a boy, he experiences things I've never experienced. Charlie is very much me in a way, and I wanted anyone to read it who was maybe suffering with similar things he does, to be able to see a character and see that he does get through it. Sorry for the spoilers, but he does. It's not a bad ending. So just look at some more questions. Hello, people who are saying hi. So happy that everyone could come and listen to me ramble about my book. Am I straight? That's a bit of a weird question. I am proud to say that my sexuality has nothing to do with my writing. So there we go. Be who you want to be. And I'm very proud to say that the LGBTQ community is amazing. It's an amazing community to be a part of. And the people who have identified in that community, who've read the book, have been outstanding, I must say. And I can't praise any of them enough. Let me just check the time, so I don't want to overrun on anyone else's time. Okay. I will just answer another question from Instagram. Apart from C and E, who I assume they mean Charlie and Ezra, who is your favourite character? And that's really hard to answer. It's like trying to choose like a favourite pet or child. I really loved Hildy and Andre. If you do read it, I hope you like them too. Hildy was always meant to be kind of this really stern woman. And as I was writing it, I was like, oh, do you know what? She's actually a big softie. And I wanted her to be kind of the mother figure for Charlie. And Andre was just fun to write. I really enjoyed talking about Andre, and the feedback for Andre has been great as well. So that's lovely. So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to shoot it across now, because I've got about a few minutes left before I'm going to pass you over to the next author. I just want to say that I have on my Twitter, there is a Linktree link in my bio, which will connect you to all my social media accounts and also to my books. If you live in the UK, I do post out the books myself from my website, which all come signed, and I have little stickers and stuff with them as well, because who doesn't like stickers? So please feel free to talk to me on any social media accounts you have. I'm always happy to talk to anybody, especially my readers or aspiring writers. My inbox is always open for anybody, so shoot me across anything that you wish to talk about. Roots Before Branches is out at the moment. I did say that at the beginning. Here it is. So you can grab it on Amazon. It is available worldwide. It's also on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. So if you do read it, I'll just say this, and I'm sure that a lot of the other authors would agree. If you do read it and you like it, please leave a review. Reviews mean so much to us authors, to know that people are reading our books and hopefully enjoying them. I do have a Goodreads profile with my books on there, and also on Amazon as well. So that goes for any book you read. Just let the author know you liked it, if you did. So it means so much. Right, I'm going to head off now. The next author is, I really hope I pronounced your name correctly, is Avi Silva. She's going to be talking about her fantasy novel Two Dark Moons. Her Twitter name is @TheScreamBean. The Scream Bean. I actually love that. What a good name. So look her up on there, and please watch all the other authors. They are all absolutely brilliant. And thank you for being here with me for my little time slot. And again, thank you to Rachel for doing all of this. You're amazing. And thank you to At Home Yelk. And hopefully I will see you soon. Bye.